In today's episode, I'm joined by one of my former clients, Lauren, who's been through an incredibly tough journey with swallowing OCD, something that can feel completely overwhelming and isolating when you're in the middle of it. Lauren bravely shares what it was like when things were at their worst, how she began to open up to the idea of acceptance, and what the process of gradual change really looked like for her. We also talk honestly about setbacks, how she handles them, and what life looks like now that she's learned to live with more freedom and less fear. Whether you experience sensorimotor OCD yourself or are just curious about how other people recover, this is a powerful and hopeful conversation, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And remember, if you are struggling with OCD and anxiety, I do now have a 12-week program specifically for sensorimotor OCD. If you're interested in applying for that, you can by heading over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com, and booking in there for a free discovery call. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions at all, please do let me know. And remember, it would be amazing if you could subscribe. It only takes a minute or two, and it really does make a huge difference. Many thanks, and off we go. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rob.
It's great to have you on. So obviously, you've been struggling with sensorimotor OCD. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of where you were when you first started the coaching with me?
Yeah, so being completely honest, it was probably about 6 months ago now, and I wasn't in a great place. I had quite a stressful job, and I think for a while I'd put that first before everything else, which eventually led to almost a bit of a relapse with my OCD. I've had it, I've been aware of having OCD probably since about the age of 16. I'm now 27. And I always knew I had to manage it. But I think sometimes life gets in the way. And you think, oh, like I'm doing okay until you're not. So yeah, around April time, just work was very stressful and I didn't slow down, so my body made me slow down. And yeah, it was a very, even though the theme, which we'll probably come on to talk about, I'd had before, and I'd managed to move past it, and probably not in the healthiest way. But yeah, so I was a bit like, oh, I've had it before. I was trying to tell myself, but like none of the stuff that I'd sort of put together had worked.
Yeah,
So that's why I kind of reached out
yeah,
to yourself.
yeah, yeah. Okay, and what type of sensorimotor OCD were you struggling with?
Yeah, so it was predominantly swallowing. So just being aware. I mean, it sounds bizarre when you try and explain it to other people, and also sometimes yourself, you catch yourself and you think, what a strange thing to to kind of be obsessed with.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was just an awareness. I wasn't like fearful of like eating or drinking or anything like that. It was just being uncomfortable with the awareness. So yeah, a strange one, but I think actually surprisingly common.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think actually more people than we think actually struggle with this, and I think many
Mm,
people do feel a sense of shame about it. Sadly, why would I be struggling with something like this? Other
mm,
people struggle with real problems or big
mm,
problems, and I'm struggling with swallowing or blinking or the breath
mm,
or whatever it might be, and
mm,
people can really beat themselves up about it, but then we perhaps aren't realizing really this is actually a very difficult thing to deal with.
mm.
It seems ridiculous, on the face of it. Why would
Yeah.
I be worried about this? But the issue is that we've learned to attach anxiety, our kind of deepest fears, to these bodily actions that
Mm,
previously we didn't even think about at all. And because of that, and because of the fact that you can potentially be aware of them 24/7, it's a kind of living hell sometimes
mm.
that you can create for yourself
Yeah.
when you don't know how to deal with it.
Mm, definitely. And I think that was the scariest part because I hadn't had it come back with such severity that I almost was like almost trying to battle with myself. And I was like, it's only after I learned like the tips I was going about it completely the wrong way. But you don't know if you don't have that support. So yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And yeah, of course, once you do start figuring out how to deal with it, and that there are like actual very clear things that you can do to help you, you
Mm.
start realizing that actually this although it feels like the worst thing ever, it isn't as bad as we
No.
think, and you can learn to deal with it and to accept it. So what were, some of the things that initially helped you maybe to start making a few breakthroughs with this?
Mm. Yeah, I would say so. I've never really been one, even though I've obviously been aware I've had OCD for a while. I've never really been necessarily one to put my mental health first, which sounds bad, but I think I didn't realize I knew it was important, but it's kind of until you get to a point where you're faced with it that I
Yeah,
feel like I really make the necessary steps.
yeah,
So I would say the first one was a meditation that you gave me that was basically it's okay to be aware, which like for maybe a few weeks I was just thinking like I can't be aware. I need to do everything I can to distract myself. So like I remember at one point I was just playing a game on my phone. Like and it was yeah, I was maybe like not obsessing about the swallowing, but I was not relaxed. It was a distraction which wasn't helping and making it worse in the long run. So actually teaching myself to be aware that being aware is okay actually
yeah,
did help. But I would say for like anyone that's like, oh, I'm trying to sit here and say, oh, it's fine to be aware. Like, don't get me wrong, I didn't sit there and think, you know what, I'm fine now. I did not
yeah,
believe it to start with. I had to sit there, and it was only when I just felt the slightest little bit of relief or just like the anxiety just dissipating for just a moment, I was like, right, this is the only thing that's actually made me feel a bit at peace, whereas the
yeah,
rest was a distraction. So I would say that was the first moment, definitely.
yeah, yeah. That's
Mm,
brilliant. So you started
mm,
to kind of shine a light on the
mm.
possibility of acceptance.
Yeah.
Perhaps up until that point, there wasn't even a light of that, that it felt like this is something that, I think the problem I had in the past myself was that I felt that I had to fix it.
Mm,
Like there had to be a solution out there. And if I just tried hard enough, if I
mm,
fought hard enough, I would find this solution to
mm,
fix it,
mm.
and then it would go away and leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I think this is a place where most people kind of find themselves when they're
Mm,
struggling with this.
yeah, definitely. I feel like I remember it was, I think it's with one session with you and you were like, you need to stop ruminating. And I was just like, you can't, like, you just sit there and you could just like, could have said, there were points when I sat there for like hours, just being like, oh, like if I just think like, or if I think back to, like, I almost had this point where it was before April and after April, and like after being aware of the thought, like it felt like two distinct time periods. Like it was
Yeah,
actually almost like this is what my life was like before. And then I was like, well, no, actually, like you're just making it worse. It's the same with like any kind of anxiety. It's like sometimes the more you think about it, the worse it gets. And you end up with thoughts that you hadn't even thought about or were worried about because you've just sat there.
yeah,
So I think even for that, it's like even on those days when you're like, oh, maybe I could solve it today. It's like, no, you remind yourself and then you go and like you just go and do something, whether it's like make dinner, go for a walk, go like haven't got back into running yet. That used to help me, but like getting into a sport or just
mm,
moving can make such a
yeah.
difference.
And if you're struggling with sensorimotor OCD, I do have a 12-week program that is specifically designed to help you to break free from sensorimotor OCD. It's really built on my own personal experiences and from now having worked with many, many people who struggle with these things. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to my website at robertjamescoaching.com and book in for a free discovery call. There's a link in the show notes. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And I think that kind of brings us round to acceptance commitment therapy.
mm,
Obviously, that's a big part of the approach that
mm,
I take with people. And a huge part of that is what you were just talking about
mm,
there. Realizing that actually what one of the things that OCD does in general,
mm,
and in particular, I think sensorimotor OCD, is it gets us so fixated with this
mm,
narrow spotlight
mm,
on the problem itself.
mm,
This thing that we're telling ourselves is a problem that we have to get rid of.
mm,
And we fixate in on it. And everything else that might be going well in our lives or that might be, amazing or great, suddenly it takes a back seat. We begin to forget about it. It's
mm,
much harder for us to focus in on it.
mm,
And life becomes this horrible thing because we feel
mm,
like it doesn't matter what I'm doing because I'm still aware of this thing.
mm,
In a way, acceptance commitment therapy encourages us to realize that as well as a kind of spotlight, there's a kind of floodlight
mm,
that, yeah, you can be aware of this sensation,
mm,
this discomfort, but you can also be aware of the other things in your life that are really meaningful and important to you, your values, your goals, the stuff you care about, the people in your life that
mm.
are meaningful and important to you.
Yeah.
And when we choose to really focus our attention on that and try to tell ourselves the awareness is allowed to be there.
Mm,
Little by little, it's
mm,
difficult at first, as
mm,
you alluded to, but little by little, it does get easier. No?
mm. Yeah, definitely. I remember there were times when, like, some of the stuff that I'm doing now, which sounds ridiculous because I do it without a thought before, but just like going out for like drinks and stuff for like my mum's birthday the other week, it's like that would have created quite a bit of anxiety a few weeks ago, thinking like, oh, I can't be present. Whereas actually I was there and I was enjoying myself. And actually, yeah, the swallowing came and went as it is at the moment, but what I was still able to be present and enjoyed myself. So I think it is that at the beginning it's so hard. You think, how am I, like, you almost go, how am I ever not going to be able to think about it? But then by doing that, you're actually fueling it. So you almost have to appreciate that it might take a bit of time. And that's what I found quite difficult at first. I just wanted to be like, oh, like a quick fix, I can sort this and then get back to work and everything's going to be fine. And I was like, actually, in a way, it's definitely not the best thing that's ever happened to me. But in a way, it's actually made me look at what I'm doing currently and go, you know what, you're not maybe eating the best. You probably haven't prioritized like your nutrition. You probably not prioritize your sleep. So actually, it's quite understandable how I got to this position. So it actually, in a way, has made me have a complete relook at what I'm doing. And I'm not saying that's the case for everyone. It's like they might be managing and it can happen anyway. But yeah, it was an experience.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, absolutely.
mm,
And I think you're right. So many people, I think, make that realization where they
mm,
see, okay, maybe there was a reason for why this has been happening like
mm,
this. Because modern life is difficult. There's so much stress these days. It's very easy to get caught up in all of that. And when we look after ourselves a bit more,
mm,
obviously a lot of these things can get a bit easier to deal with.
mm.
You mentioned earlier that rumination has been a big part of it for you and learning to manage rumination. So could you walk me through kind of how things have changed with that for you and what's helped you with that?
Yeah, because I think before I used to just like I said, I used to just kind of sit there and I'd let my thoughts run the show. And I think what has helped me now is going like the thought, like I can't necessarily control what my mind is going to create. That you have so many thoughts, and what I kind of do now is I definitely notice an uptick around if I'm getting stressed, and then I'll start ruminating and being like, could that, like, just so many different endless possibilities kind of thing. But what I kind of try and do now is I try and not necessarily replace the thought, but I just go, no, this is the OCD, or this is nothing to be worried about. And one that's worked quite well recently is just like, you're safe. Because I think it is when for me, I found like when my OCD flares, it's like a nervous system reaction. So it's
Yeah,
like I'm quite anxious or stressed about something. So just going, I'm safe, or getting up and making a cup of tea, those kind of comfort things, you
yeah,
just need to lean into them. And I think I've always thought, oh, a great thing about me is that like, oh, I'm strong and I don't really always show my emotions, not like in work or in other environments, but actually, who's that helping? It's not me, and it's the
yeah.
other, no one else. If no one can see your emotions, they're not it's not on them, it just affects you. So
Mm.
I think I've learned that actually just being kind to yourself, because I used to be like, when I was going for it initially in April, I was not kind. I was like, why you think about this? You need to get yourself back out there. Like, I was like, oh, I miss it because I took some time off work. I was like, well, I need to get back out there. I need, you know what I mean? Like, people are depending on me. I was even sometimes checking my emails when I was off ill, and I was like, well, this isn't helping. Like, I knew I was doing all the things that weren't helping. So yeah, it was just in terms of just stepping back and going, treating yourself with the kindness that you would give to other people, I think is
Yeah,
the key thing.
absolutely. Self-compassion is
Mm,
a huge, huge part of it.
yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that, occasionally it does come up again from time to time. So
Mm.
where are you now with it? And yeah,
Yeah, it's a weird one because I think it's there more often than it was before, like before, I guess. But what I'm kind of in the stage at very much now of like, it's there and it's not gonna like rule my life. So I'll still go out and I mean, I've made a few changes. I've left my current job and I'm about to start a new one in a few months. So I've made a few changes like that that I know will help me in the long run. But just like day to day at the moment, it's just telling myself and reminding myself of where I've come from, and just going like, it's fine to be aware of these things. These are perfectly normal. And on those days when it is a bit difficult, it's just going like, it's just completely normal. It's just a bodily function. And it's hard. Some days you're like, oh yeah, but no one else thinks about this. And it's like, well, yeah, but just because they don't think about that, they might be thinking about something else. You just don't know what anyone else is going through. And I think comparing yourself just makes you feel more isolated, especially with OCD. So it's really important not to do that. But yeah.
yeah, I think it's really helpful what you mentioned to compare yourself to where you've come from rather than comparing yourself to other people.
Mm,
Back in April, you were thinking about it all the time.
mm,
Um, you were completely stuck with it and
yeah.
getting infuriated by it. Now you've really kind of taken the acceptance commitment therapy kind of principles to heart
Mm,
of
yeah.
getting back into your life and bringing any difficult thoughts,
Mm,
sensations, whatever, along for the ride. You don't
yeah.
need to get rid of them in order to start living your life.
Mm,
Typically, when we do that, yeah, as you said, you may be aware of it sometimes,
mm,
but a lot of the time you're not aware of it as
mm,
well.
yeah.
No, it depends what's going on in your life. If you have more stress,
Mm,
like that can make us more aware of it again or remind us of it.
yeah.
I think what happened to me in my own life with sensorimotor OCD is that, for a long, long time it was there.
Mm,
Over 10 years of struggling with it.
mm,
And I felt like it was never going to go. Once I started to work with on myself with acceptance commitment therapy,
mm,
I started to notice these little windows of, oh, I haven't noticed it for 5 minutes.
mm,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. And then it would increase slightly, a little bit longer
Mm,
and a little bit longer. Um,
yeah.
and then it might be a whole kind of morning where I didn't notice it.
Mm,
But then I might get triggered again and
mm,
feel like I was having a huge setback and it would gone back to square one. It
mm,
hadn't, because the progress that we make is never lost. But when we have a setback, it feels like we've gone back to square one. It
mm,
feels very frustrating. The old patterns of behavior come back in. We start resisting the awareness
mm,
again, telling
mm,
ourselves, "Oh no, it's back." The reality is that it's a bit tricky at times, but when you respond with compassion, as you were talking
mm,
about, kindness with yourself and
mm,
patience, those moments when it does come back up, you're able to just remind yourself it is
mm.
just awareness. It
Yeah.
will pass if I don't tell too much of a negative story about it by
Mm,
ruminating.
yeah.
And it does at some point then pass on
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say as well with that, it's I got caught up quite a bit in like, because you have I say the traditional type of OCD, you can see the compulsions that you're doing. So like if you're checking like the oven's turned off, it might go over to the switch and check that. I won't say too many more just in case it's triggering. But with the mental, what, like when it's more mentally like in your focus, you can then
Yeah.
be caught up on, oh, like, am I doing a compulsion? So for example, like I didn't like being aware of it. So I'd make myself like I would then be like, well, I'm gonna make myself a cup of tea. And I got that confused with being like, oh well, I just don't want to be aware of it. So if I have a cup of tea, it would just distract me for a bit. But then I've realized now I'm like, okay, maybe I was doing it for that sake in April, but I also just enjoy a cup of tea. And if that is helping me, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that's helping me relax, then I'm going to do it. And I think you can get caught up in it, especially when you do like Google and it's like, oh, there's like the compulsions, you need to stop doing them. So then you're almost frantically like, what could the compulsion be? And sometimes it's like, it is does feel a bit different. It's just kind of an awareness, and it's kind of going, actually at the core, what would help you, rather than getting caught up in like, am I doing a compulsion that's making it worse, apart from rumination, which I would say do stop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's a really
Mm,
good point you've just made there.
mm,
I was talking about something similar the other day on the
mm,
podcast where, I think sometimes people get caught up in questioning, like,
mm,
is what I'm doing right now, is it a compulsion? Because
mm,
I have to eliminate all compulsions. And if I
mm.
don't, it's going to keep going, And
Yeah.
one of those that people typically get stuck on is manually, like
Mm,
swallowing or blinking or whatever.
mm,
Am I manually doing it? Because if I'm manually swallowing,
mm,
that's definitely a compulsion and
mm,
it's going to keep it worse.
mm,
It's going to keep me stuck. And, I really think that's a really unhelpful way of looking at it
mm,
because, unfortunately, in sensorimotor OCD, you've become so hyper aware at times of
mm,
it by thinking and ruminating on it so much
mm,
that, you might manually
mm.
swallow sometimes.
Yeah.
Or you might start manually breathing or whatever it might be.
Mm,
It's not actually a problem. Okay,
mm,
officially, you might describe it as a compulsion.
mm,
But because it's sensory motor OCD, it's a little bit different. It's kind of because it's a bodily action. In a
mm.
way, because you're so aware of it, it kind of still is
Mm.
involuntary, you know?
Yeah. Mm.
You're just kind of doing it because you've made yourself so aware of it. And
Yeah.
so I think if you can try to let yourself off the hook, your example of the cup of tea was really good as well. Maybe you're just doing it because you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like it's not bad. You don't have to be so perfectionistic about it. I think
Mm.
the more important thing is, can you come back into the present?
Yeah.
As soon as you start overthinking the process, am I doing it right? Am I swallowing too much, or
Mm.
am I swallowing in the right way? Or is having a cup of tea like a compulsion as well? And is
Mm.
that going to ruin my recovery?
Yeah.
Well, now you're ruminating basically, and that's one of the
Yeah.
sneakiest compulsions that there is in sensory motor OCD.
Oh, definitely. You can think, oh, I'm just thinking about it, but it's like, no, like you've zoned everything out, and all you're doing is you're thinking about what you see as the issue. And it's like, yeah, I do think like rumination, because I think I didn't even realize I was doing it when we
Yeah,
were first speaking.
yeah,
And then I was like, no, I actually am. And like when I look back, like I tried doing like some puzzles and stuff to keep me busy. But like the whole time I was just like, I was ruminating the whole time. I had something on just as like a distraction to watch, but I was like,
yeah,
I'm not even being present in what I'm watching, because all I am is in my head. So yeah, it is just a sneaky one to be careful of.
yeah. Fantastic. So you just cut out right at
Oh
the
no.
end there. Um, just like the last 20 seconds of what you were saying cut out frustratingly.
Oh no, that's okay. I was just saying, like, I think that at the beginning, when I was quite stressed, I would be doing like puzzles to try and keep myself distracted. And I'd have something on, but I realized that I wasn't even, well, one, I wasn't even present with the puzzle I was trying to do, or the film or the program I had on. I was just so in my head. Like
Yeah,
I would just spend all day, every day in my head.
yeah,
And whereas now, don't get me wrong, there are times I could come back from work and I'm like, oh, it's a bit stressful, or I can get in my head, but I just have better coping strategies than I
yeah.
did before.
Yeah, absolutely. You're able to come into the present more, to be
Mm,
more kind and accepting with it, to focus your attention
mm,
outward onto things outside of you, all sorts of things that just help us to be more grounded. and
Yeah.
to let go of it. So thank you so much for sharing all of this, Lauren. I'm sure other people have found it really, really helpful to hear. Do you have perhaps, one piece of advice, if you were going to tell
Mm.
people one thing, that might help them to kind of deal with sensorimotor OCD, what would it be?
I would say for me it was don't be so hard on yourself when it comes in to like your focus. If you're struggling with an awareness of anything, I honestly think that was the self-compassion was the biggest thing for me. I used to just like I said, I had a stressful job. I just pushed myself to the brink, thought like it'll be fine. But it's actually, I think someone said actually it's your body that no, like notices things first and then it's your mind that kind of picks it up afterwards. So actually it was almost like my body knew something was wrong, and then it was by that point the mind like my mind had signaled like
Yeah,
you're doing too much. So it's like obviously then when I became aware of it, I was just like, well, I can just sort it by saying, oh, just like we need to get over it, just carry on. But the
yeah,
biggest turning point for me was just going, like you have been through a lot, and just like look at your circumstances and just think, you know what, I have put up with a lot. It's okay that like I may be struggling now, but actually I will get better. It will be fine. And just take those steps. Don't think you need to make these big leaps, but just those little steps every day.
yeah, yeah. Fantastic.
Mm.
Lauren, thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Cheers.
This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.